welcome to Unit 1, Note 7. So today we're going to be talking about the midpoint formula. So we're going to start by talking about the midpoint formula on a line. So to start off with, what is a midpoint? Okay, so let's talk about what a midpoint is. And the midpoint is the point halfway between 2 points. So the point halfway between 2 points. So the midpoint is the point halfway between 2 points. We're basically trying to find the halfway point. So let's take a look at the midpoint formula on the number line. So to find out the number line, you're going to take the two numbers that you have on the number line, so x1 and say maybe x2, then you're going to divide them by 2. So let's take a look, and we want to find the midpoint of f and h. So here's f and here's h. So we have -3 and we have 5. So we're going to take and we're going to add those two together and divide them by 2. Well, -3 plus 5 is 2. Divided by 2 is going to be equal to 1. For the next one, what is the midpoint of GH? So now we want to calculate the midpoint of G and H. Well, G is at 1 and H is at 5. So we have 1 plus 5 divided by 2, which is the same as 6 over 2, which is 3. So the midpoint of those 2 points is 3. Next, let's take a look at number 3. Find B given that A is the midpoint of BT. So what is that telling us? Well, that's telling us that this length right here is going to be equal to this length right here. So that means that 2B plus 3 is going to be equal to 11. So now we can go ahead and solve that for B. So I'm going to start by subtracting 3 from both sides, okay, because we're adding that 3, so the opposite would be to subtract. So we get 2B is equal to 8, and then we're going to divide both sides by 2, and we get that B is equal to 4. Okay, so the final answer is that B is equal to 4. Let's take a look at number 4. It says find the measure of PQ if Q is the midpoint of PR. So that tells us that this length is equal to this length. So as a result, we can set the two expressions equal to each other. So we have 14 plus 5y, and that's going to be equal to 9y minus 2. So now we want to go ahead and solve this for y. So I like to take the smaller amount of y's and bring it to the larger amount of y's. So here I have a positive 5y, so to get it to the other side, I need to subtract 5y. And then I get 14 is equal to 4y minus 2. Now I need to keep solving. So here I want to get this away from the y, so I'm going to add 2 to both sides. And I get 16 is equal to 4y. Divide both sides by 4. And then I get that y is equal to 4. The question, if you notice at the top, also asks us to find the measure of PQ. So I want to know how long this is. So once I've calculated out 4, I'm not quite done. So what I have to do next, I have to plug that in. So we have 14 plus 5. Now instead of writing y, I'm going to plug in what I know y is, which is 4. So then I get 14 plus 20, and that's going to be equal to 34. So the line segment PQ, remember it's just a segment so we don't have the arrows on it, is going to be equal to 34. Alright, next. Let's take a look at calculating the midpoint when we're talking about a coordinate point. So to start off with, we have to be able to identify what those coordinate points are. So let's start taking a look at point H. So first I want to figure out how many I'm going over. So I'm going over 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I'm going over 5 for point H, or 6, I'm sorry, I'm going over 6. So I'm going over 6, and then I want to count how many I'm going up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this H is going to be the coordinate point 6, 5. Remember, coordinate points go X, then Y. Let's take a look at point F. Well, point F, I'm going right 1, which is going to be positive, but then I'm going down 1. And remember, going down is negative, so I have 1, -1. Let's take a look at G. We're going left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we're going left 7. Now remember, left is negative, so we're going left 7, and then down 1. Down is also negative. So we have -7, -1. We also have 1, -1, and then we have 6, 5. So the midpoint formula of a coordinate plane, given 2 points x1, y1, and x2, y2, the coordinate points of the midpoint can be found. So to get the coordinate points of the midpoint, it's kind of like what we did with the number line previously, except we're going to do it for 2 points. So x1 plus x2 divided by 2, y1 plus y2 divided by 2. Okay, and that's the formula for the coordinate point. Now, first it asks us what the midpoint of HG is. Okay, so to calculate that out, what we're going to do is we're going to figure out for FH. So we're going to take our x coordinates, so 1 plus 6, and divide that by 2. And then the coordinates of our y coordinates, negative 1 plus 5. So we're going to keep them negative if they're negative. So then we're going to get, for this one, 1 plus 6 is 7. And so then we're going to get 7 halves. And we could just leave that as a decimal. You could write that as 3.5 if you wanted to, but we're just going to leave that as 7 halves. And then negative 1 plus 5 is 4, divided by 2 is 2. So the midpoint between F and H, so the midpoint of this line right here, is going to be 7 halves, 2. So if you were to plot that point, if we were to go over 1, 2, 3, and up a half, and up 2, that would be our midpoint. Next, let's take a look at points G and F. So now we're looking at G and F. So we're going to take x1 plus y1 and divide it by 2. And then we're going to take y1 plus y2 and divide that by 2. So then we're going to get negative 1 plus 6, or sorry, negative 7. Oh, it's GF. I did GH. Whoops. All right, let's fix that. I was wondering why it wasn't making sense. Okay, so we should be doing GF. So let's go ahead and fix that right now. So we have negative 7 plus 1, because those are our two x's, and then divide that by 2, and then our two y's, negative 1 plus negative 1 divided by 2. So then here we have negative 7 plus 1 is going to be negative 6 divided by 2. Negative 1 plus negative 1 is negative 2 divided by 2. So we divide those out, and we get negative 3, negative 1 for our final answer. So that's the midpoint between G and F. Let's take a look at some of these calculation problems. So we want to find the midpoint between those 2 points. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my x's and add them together, so negative 2 and negative 6. So negative 2 plus negative 6 and divide that by 2. And I'm going to do 4 and negative 6. So 4 plus a negative 6 and divide that by 2. So now let's calculate that out. Negative 2 plus negative 6 is negative 8 divided by 2. 4 plus negative 6 is negative 2 divided by 2. Simplifying out that some more, negative 8 divided by 2 is going to be negative 4, and negative 2 over 2 is negative 1. So all I'm doing is I'm taking the two x coordinates and adding them together and dividing them by 2. The two y coordinates and adding them together and dividing by 2. So let's take a look at that for number 8. So for number 8, we're going to have 3 plus 5 and divide that by 2. And then 7 plus 9 and divide that by 2. So x plus x, y plus y, and then dividing each by 2. So 3 plus 5 is going to give us 8 divided by 2. 7 plus 9 is going to give us 16 divided by 2. So writing that out as a coordinate point, 8 divided by 2 is 4, and 16 divided by 2 is 8. So that is your final answer for that one. Next, let's take a look at numbers 9 and number 10. So we're almost finished up. These are our last couple. So let's go ahead and we're going to do x1 plus y1. So 4 plus a negative 2, and we're going to divide that by 2. Negative 6 plus negative 6, and divide that by 2. So remember, when we're adding two negative numbers together, it's going to get more negative. Well, here, 4 plus a negative 2, that's really the same as 4 minus 2, which is just going to be 2, and we're going to divide that by 2. Negative 6 plus negative 6, that's going to get more negative. That's going to give us a negative 12. Divide that by 2. So 2 over 2 is 1. Negative 12 over 2 divided by 2 is going to be 6. So our answer to that one is 1, negative 6. All right, let's take a look at number 10. So we have x and y and y. So I'm going to do negative 3 plus 1 divided by 2. Oops, I did divide it by 3. So negative 3 plus 1 divided by 2. And then in our parenthesis, we also want to have negative 5 plus a negative 2 divided by 2. And it doesn't matter what order you write them in because adding can happen both ways. So negative 3 plus 1 is negative 2 divided by 2. 5 plus minus 2 is 3 over 2. Okay, so this negative 2 over 2 is going to be just a negative 1, and you can leave this as 3 halves, or you could divide it out if you wanted to, because sometimes it's hard for us to understand what 3 halves means. So I'm going to write that as negative 1, and then that's the same as 1.5. So that's your final answer. Thanks for listening, and show me your note sheet when you're done.